recording will be that record of our meeting. All right, so we'll go ahead with that. Then let's see, we talked about the original plan. So yeah, we said we would just use this time to kind of talk about what we see going on in our particular areas. And I can also share, we had Representative Basenecker come to a meeting I was in last Friday. It's a meeting of the group of partnerships for age-friendly communities. He came and gave a little bit of a sneak preview of legislation and some bills that he sees that will be coming forward. So, but rather than me starting out, I'm just going to open up here and ask if there's anyone who'd like to start the conversation of what they see happening in their neck of the woods around housing. Good or bad?
Well, it's all bad. But I will just say that the migrant crisis in Denver is really hitting hard. Mainly from Venezuela. I'm figuring you've all heard about this. Almost 30,000 Venezuelan migrants have been transported to Colorado from mainly Texas. And I'm not saying that Texas should bear the brunt of all of this migration, but there should be a little more coordination. But I'm sure you all know that we don't have 30,000 affordable housing units for these folks who are in absolute crisis.
Yeah, we see that on the news, and I just keep asking myself, where is this going to end? I mean, how do we address? I mean, it's pretty. I don't understand why the national level. Maybe I do understand, but it just seems like this immigration issue nobody wants to deal with it. It just keeps boiling over, and nothing happens.
And as far as I understand it, the people that are coming in are not allowed to get jobs. And so then that just adds to the burden. And a lot of them would be more, in fact, I would say the majority of them, if not all of them, would be very happy to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big issue.
So basically then it's not even affordable housing units, it's totally sponsored housing units.
Yeah.
At least in the short term.
Well, we need to address our immigration policies. We have put it off and put it off and put it off. The DACA kids still haven't been settled. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and how do we move that lever? Yeah, as Beth says, there's so much negative, bad news out there for housing and our possibilities. But we have to come down to our local levels, and hopefully that's where we can move things a little bit. Does anybody seeing any movement out there on the positive side with housing developments that are either in the pipeline or being built?
It's not immediate, but there have been a number of municipalities and counties and so on that have signed on to Prop 123. And they have committed to building a certain amount of housing units. It's not an absolute because there isn't a huge penalty if that doesn't happen, but at least there's some movement in that direction. So I'm trying to be positive about that aspect of it. One really positive thing that happened in Jefferson County, this isn't specific to housing, but it's something that we long needed. A group in Lakewood, Recovery Works, put in a grant application and received $9.3 million, and they're going to turn it into a navigation center. So we will finally get one place that people can go, at least in that central part of Jeffco, for services. And also there eventually will be 75 shelter beds And the thing that I'm really excited about is those shelter beds are going to be in individual rooms. It's not going to be a big dormitory. And so that means people can actually keep their belongings and put them under lock and key. You know, a lot of homeless people would be more than happy to have jobs, but they lose their belongings if they try and leave anything. So at least that's one positive thing. It's going to take about a year for it to be up and running, but they're using it for a day shelter now. And they're also going to use it for an extreme weather shelter. Although unfortunately, extreme weather in Jefferson County is 10 degrees or below, whereas I know in Denver it's 20. I think 10 is just not low enough, but at least there's some movement, whereas last year it didn't seem like anything was in place before the bad weather hit. So
You can live outside at 20 or 10 degrees. That's just inhumane.
yeah, there's
That
all
said,
these
I
ads
don't know
about,
the answer.
there's all these ads about taking your pets inside. Don't leave your pets outside.
Yeah,
Mhm. How
yeah,
about our neighbors?
Yeah.
yeah.
Trish,
Yeah.
I have some good news about Loveland. Loveland is opening a safe lot at one of the churches here. And I did hear recently that they are going to, I don't know that they'll be able to stay inside all night, but they are going to allow people in to take showers and things. So that is a super positive note. Plus, locally, we elected some people who are realistic. They will think about affordable housing and not veto everything in that area. So good news in Loveland.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that, Vaughn. Yeah, and just a secondary note on the Safe Lot project that we've just been able, that's just gotten off the ground in Loveland. The population that's, and it's only 5 cars. We've started small to kind of get it off the ground. But the age group that's being served in that lot are seniors between the ages of 60 and 80.
Well,
So that's telling you, you know, who we have out there that are on the verge. I mean, the car is their last stop before becoming homeless people, you know, losing everything as a place to stay. So yeah, we're excited about the lot, and it is exciting if they're going to allow them in for the cold weather and for the showers. That's great.
And another note on that that's kind of sad is that the Greek Orthodox Church here in town wanted to do that, and their overseers, the archdiocese or whatever it's called with the Greek Orthodox, said absolutely not. So that's sad.
I do, a friend of mine is the executive director of the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. I'd be happy to contact her if you ever want her to speak.
Yes.
And she used to run the Dolores project, which is a shelter for adult women with no children.
Okay. And you know, Beth, just to let you know, it was that they came and spoke to our affordable housing team.
Cool.
About 2 years ago, and that gave us the impetus to take that idea and see if we could get it started up here, because they were telling us they were getting a lot of calls from people looking for lots in northern Colorado, and there was nothing available. So they were a huge help, and we continue to stay in touch with them. So thank you. That's great. Okay, other news, I got to tell you about one that I'm really excited about, and I've got the YouTube link I can send to you, but the Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce in November put on, I'll call it a webinar, titled Reducing the Cost of Housing Through Innovation. And they brought in, there's a company called Alquist 3D that is relocating to Greeley, Colorado from Iowa City. And they are printing 3D homes. And I mean, that concept just blew me away. But anyway, this young man that heads up that company came and did a presentation, and they are working in conjunction with the city of Greeley and the Greeley Weld Habitat organization with a project called the Hope Springs Project. Some of you may have heard about that, but anyway, they're bringing 300 affordable housing units that will development. It's a housing development that will have 300 rentals, a park, a childcare center, and 174 single family lots from Habitat. And one of those homes will be the first 3D printed home in Colorado. So this company, I think, is going to be worth watching to see what happens. Of course, until they can print to scale, you know, we never did get a cost for what this house is going to be, but they basically do the foundation of that home. And then the rest of the home, you still need your skilled tradespeople coming in to do the electricity, the plumbing, and all of those inner parts. But it's a pretty innovative, exciting project. And they came to Greeley because of the need, of course, in Colorado, the need for housing. And they also know there's two things I've heard that puts Greeley on the map for expansion is land and water. And so that was something that was looked at when they came. Plus Greeley gave that company, I guess, quite a group, you know, a bundle of incentives along with the state of Colorado. But just put that company on your radar for housing, because I think we're going to hear more about them, as well as that Hope Springs development is going to be really exciting to watch come online. It's going to be the largest habitat community in the western part of the country. Yeah.
And to add to what Trish said, they also told us at that meeting that they are coordinating with the high schools, and there's a program where students can come there and train. And once they train with them, they're almost guaranteed jobs. So that was just an extra plus.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that. I forgot about that part, Vaughn. Perfect. All right, and then I'm sure you've heard about Fort Collins in the news with their land use code. They've just had a couple more steps happen. They had signatures gathered once that forced the city council back to repealing. City council held all their meetings with the community, did all their work, did the repeals in the areas they thought would make the biggest difference with some of the objections. Well, round two, there's another round of petitions have come in against the repealed land use code. And now there's been a protest submitted against the petitioners. So it's a very complicated story. But anyway, Fort Collins is having all kinds of trouble repealing their land use code, which kind of goes back to what the state was trying to do last year with the land use code in making some of those changes statewide. So I think we're going to hear more about that. Representative Basenecker said Friday that that piece will come back, and they're still looking at the state doing some things, but yet leaving enough room in there for local governments to come in and finesse and work it the way it will work best in their community. But it's pretty obvious that for land use, there are going to have to be some changes made at another level, because the pushback is when you start talking density, ADUs, traffic, it's the same arguments being presented against all of these projects. We just had 3 go down in probably the last 6 months in Loveland. And the voices are loud. And the thing we heard this morning at a meeting I was at is the voices for the opposition are very, very loud, and they're there. And there aren't enough voices at these meetings and places where housing is being discussed that are in support of them. So any ideas or anything you see going on in your communities that would help us figure that part out in northern Colorado, because we're not in a good spot.
It's also a problem in some of the municipalities in the Front Range south of you as well. We've had various municipalities have a very vocal presentation against density and increasing density and improving transportation and things like that for their neighborhoods. And it is an issue, and the opposition is very loud with no solutions in mind. They don't come with solutions either.
No, there's an organization, and I'm trying to get a little more information, but there's a group in Fort Collins called YIMBY. It's Yes in My Backyard. I
Mhm.
don't know if any of you are familiar with them in your communities, but there's nothing like that in Loveland. But they are an active group in Fort Collins, so
They're
might
very
hook into
active in
them.
Denver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we talked to them a little bit about expanding into Jefferson County, but we couldn't find a clear path to doing that.
Yeah, and isn't it, am I right? It's kind of hard I mean, I could join that group as an individual, but we can't really bring the league's voice. Am I right, Beth? The league's voice into those kinds of groups? Yeah. Yeah, so it's coming and speaking as individuals as part of that group, but they have their meetings. It's at a very different time and a difficult time for me because I'm not a late night person, but they meet at 9 o'clock in the evening on Sundays in Fort Collins. So I'll try them for one meeting, but I may have to see if I can get a coffee meeting instead of a bedtime meeting.
It seems like they don't want people if they're doing it then.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see Barb's got a connection in there for YIMBY, Colorado. Okay, I don't hear a lot about them, so it'll be kind of interesting to follow their path and see what's happening. Okay, let's see. Anybody else have a tidbit to share from their community?
I could share a little something for Jeffco. This is Betty Sealand. Our league did agree to concur with the Arapahoe Douglas position on housing and the unhoused. And so we were pleased that that went through. And hopefully we can have a good basis now for action at the local level. And I was wondering, is it just Arapahoe and Douglas County and Jeffco now that have agreed to that position statement? Are there other leagues that are looking at that at all?
Not to my knowledge. So I think it's just our two leagues. And I just want to say that in our counties, it seems like the strongest opposition we run into is from neighbors. I mean, it's the NIMBY thing. And it makes me crazy because, I mean, it would be one thing if it were developers wanting more profit or something, but we're just having a terrible time with, neighborhood organizations are concerned about traffic through their streets and losing character and whatever. And that's just been considerable opposition.
Yeah. Sounds like somebody said to me here recently, it is NIMBYism, but it's gotten a lot more sophisticated in terms of how they present their arguments, but they're the same arguments. Same arguments.
And I just was going to say in Englewood, there was even a recall of some city officials based on opposition to increased density. So I just wanted to point that out. It failed. They didn't recall any of them, but one resigned, and then I think there were like 3 on the ballot right before the November 7th election. They had a special election about a month before. So
yeah, it can be very disheartening, to say the least. I want to come back to what Betty was talking about. Betty, are you speaking about a housing position?
Housing and the unhoused. It has goals for the unhoused. And then it gives several standards, best practices kind of things that would support action for the unhoused.
Is there a way other leagues could get a look at that?
I would think so. And, maybe it would be a way to get more leagues involved in it to sort of spread the word and get more information out.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what would be the best way to go about doing that.
Yes, Barb?
I'll post it on our website. We usually just deal with it, our members internally, but I'll post it on our website so that you all can have a link if I could send it to the state league. And that way, because that's
Right.
Betty, this is great. I didn't know that Jeffco was doing this. And I think if we could get more leagues to sign on, we did a lot of study. We had experts come and speak, homelessness experts, housing experts, and then developed a local position. And if we could share that, I think that would be great.
Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah, please do. So you're gonna send it to
Absolutely.
Beth and then,
I'll
Mhm.
send a link. I'll post it because right now it's in a document. I can either put it in Google Docs or, oh yeah, I'll put it in Google Docs and I'll send a link is what I'll do.
And
So are you looking for statewide approval? Sorry,
Yeah.
Kate.
yeah, I think it's worthwhile for us to pursue that.
Yeah.
I strongly support that next step. Trish, I just sent you a copy of the press release, which has basically just the whole position that we did the concurrence on.
okay, all right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
So
But-
this is a concurrence?
Yes. And because
Who did
Arapahoe
the
Douglas-
original?
Yeah, Arapahoe Douglas had the original study and position, and they passed it through their system and through the process of creating a new position for them. And then we want to get something in place right away, which is how we sold it basically, is that this really supports our LAC efforts as well as county commission efforts and city efforts. And to have these positions in place that we can then bring it to these meetings that we're having with stakeholders as well as electeds.
And this position specifically addresses homelessness.
Correct.
And it states the goals, moving those who are experiencing homelessness into safe housing environment as quickly as possible, providing housing that is affordable, safe, appropriate, and adequately maintained, preventing people from falling into homelessness, respecting the dignity of those who are experiencing homelessness, and promoting self-sufficiency. And then it also includes several strategies that we would support communities using to achieve those goals.
I'm
So
going to share my screen and show it to you.
Awesome.
Can you
Yeah,
all-
Jill was our fearless leader in this endeavor, and she just did a job.
Can you see it?
Yes,
Mhm.
Mhm.
We felt it was so much more robust than what we had. And we've already had several opportunities to feel like this would be really useful.
So do you plan to bring this, or do you have a plan to bring this forward statewide?
We don't have there's not a plan that I'm aware of, but I'll be happy to work on that with anybody that wants to work on that.
We would
And
love to
cool.
have it adopted statewide because I know Kate and Kathy Smith and a couple of other people on the Housing LAC have said that this would also make their position statements a lot stronger.
And maybe the first step is to try to get more local leagues involved.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time we did the concurrence for this one, we did the concurrence for the news access and media
Okay.
uh-huh,
statewide concurrence, and we did that at the same time.
Has everyone had a chance to look at it?
yes, that's very good. I'm just thinking of how valuable that would be in our community as well as in our league group. So yeah, I think definitely I would encourage movement across all leagues.
Absolutely. And I would say the first step would be to set up a couple educational meetings for members around the state. And of course, we can help you host those or whatever you want to do.
What we did to get ours going is we put together presentation really zeroing in on what was happening in Jefferson County to show how these position statements were not only applicable to Douglas Arapahoe, but very applicable to Jeffco. And I can't help but feel I can't think that there's a county in Colorado where housing is fine and no one's having any problems.
Mhm.
But having some numbers to kind of back it up and some personal stories and so on, I think really helped our members make their decision.
Yeah, and just to be able to hook onto that in Larimer County, I know tomorrow night at City Council, there's been a homelessness task force put together here in Loveland, and they're going to be presenting their recommendations to City Council tomorrow night around that issue. And then on another note, tomorrow, the first residents of what's called the St. Valentine development here in Loveland, which is a brand new supportive housing development that was anchored by Catholic Charities out of Denver and the city of Loveland. It's 54 apartments that are going to serve those people experiencing homelessness that are in the most dire straits that need that supportive housing model. The first residents are going to be moving in tomorrow.
Wow.
So that is really an exciting, we took a tour of it Friday, and I mean, I just can't imagine someone coming in off the street and having, but they know there's going to be a lot of work because it's not that easy. For people who have been experiencing that kind of trauma, that it looks really nice to us, but it's going to be a whole different journey for those people. But it's exciting for the community because that's going to take 54 people that are on the streets into supportive housing.
Yeah. And supportive is the key because you can't bring someone off the streets without supportive services. They don't transition, and then they wind up in housing and then getting kicked out because they don't follow any of the rules or so I'm really glad to hear it's supportive.
Yes. Yes.
Any plans to register those folks to vote?
Good on you,
that, Beth.
That's awesome.
Keep the focus.
That's right.
Well,
so the
we all
housing
know they're
go ahead.
likely not.
I know this is not local, but my ears really perked up. Rebecca sent a link to a New York Times article that some legislators are going to propose legislation on the national level to get investors out of the housing market.
Oh yeah.
I know in Jefferson County last year, about 50% of all of the affordable housing, and I'm not talking about apartments, I'm talking about houses. They were all purchased by investors. You know, and these entry-level homes, people can't compete against the investors that come in with these cash offers, and you know, they can up the ante and so on. And I just feel that housing has turned into a commodity and an investment, and it's no longer a home. And I would really like to kind of raise that up to our consciousness. They don't think they're going to be able to pass it this year because of the makeup of the legislature. But I'd like for us to at least be paying attention to that because I think that could make a huge difference everywhere. Keep these hedge funds and everything else out of our homes.
Yeah, that's been one of my biggest beefs. The way that the economy has shifted into these mega equity firms and hedge funds. It's affected our newspapers and media outlets, and now it's affecting our home and housing inventory in a negative way that's unconscionable.
And they're part of why the rents are driving, being driven so high. Because
Right.
you get all of those people trying to rent, and a small pool of people who own them. It's very easy they say it's not price fixing, but darn good and well, they're paying attention to all the other rents and just edging them up.
Mhm.
I have a question on this statewide housing task force. Do we have a list of all the members who have signed on to it and what leagues they represent? Because if we're going to do some sort of statewide education program, it would be helpful to know which leagues I'm going to have to take this call. Which leagues are already sort of working on it.
Okay,
And I've got to go.
okay.
Yeah, we can absolutely get a list of folks that have registered for every housing task force meeting. Yeah,
Yeah,
but we can also, of course, advertise in our Friday newsletters about educational presentations that you all want to do about the position, and yeah. Just
and
let us know.
maybe, I mean, the housing task force meetings, I mean, we're scheduled to have one a month, so we could easily do one of the presentations around that document at one of our meetings, so.
I think it also has to be in the evening, because this is problematic for a lot of people, the time of day.
All right, well, and that's
Yeah, I'd
good to
really
know.
suggest that.
And maybe our regular meetings should be evening meetings versus at this time. Just taking a poll of this group, what are your thoughts around meeting times?
I'm open to extending it to after work for folks that are still working or after they're done with their day,
Right, okay.
but not 9 o'clock at night.
No.
Not-
Maybe like a 6:30
Yeah,
time?
at the
Okay,
latest 7. But
Yeah.
6:30 sounds good.
yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying about getting people, at meetings, and especially a lot of these people that maybe aren't league members, but they're community people that would be interested in the discussion and the topic. The evenings would work much better for our community folks as well.
Actually,
The
I
other
would-
idea would be we could kind of go back and forth. We could have 1 month have our meeting in the evening, 1 month do it. Or is it better if we just have the same time all the time?
I vote same time, whatever, because it's too hard to schedule if you don't know month to month if it's day or night.
Okay, good
And
point.
I sort of like 7 better than 6:30, because you could actually finish dinner by then.
Okay. Well, let's give that a try then, come January. And then I'm going to go back to Jill and Barb and Betty. Is there a month like a January or February where you would want to make a presentation on the homelessness document?
Oof. Mm.
And you can think about it. You don't have to tell me right now, but do give that some thought. Barb?
Yeah, I could help organize that. It was our Arapahoe Douglas Housing, well, actually Homelessness and Housing Committee that developed that position for our league to approve, and I could get some of those people
That would be
to
great.
come and speak on it.
Okay, well, think about what month would be good, Barbara, and just let me know.
Okay.
All
And really,
right.
we piggybacked onto what you had done and just added the information about Jeffco. So I think probably your group has a better foundation, because you went much more in depth. Like I said, we just these are best practices. They researched it, and here's why it applies to Jeffco.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And as
But
you
you-
say, I'm sure would apply most parts of Colorado. All right, well, that was a great discussion. The other thing I'd make you aware of, and I don't have the link at the top of my head, but the Larimer League did a presentation in November around metro districts.
Mhm.
and it was very well received. Our Julie Stackhouse has been getting requests from other parts of the state, not connected to the league, but dealing with Metro District issues, because she did an excellent presentation at the start of that meeting, just explaining what a Metro District is. It wasn't pro, it wasn't con, it was just the facts. So that is out there if anybody is looking for information on Metro Districts. It was very well done. And otherwise, let's see if there's anything else on the list.
I have a little bit of news.
Go for
Just
it, Kate.
in terms of following up on some LAC work from last year, there were several bills that were introduced way too late to get an adequate process, and so they were shot down or just left on the floor basically, and never picked up at the final. So the various stakeholder groups, there's a coalition called Coloradans for Fair Housing, and it's comprised of a whole panoply of coalition groups or special interest groups that are working in the space for renters and tenancies, both in regular rentals as well as mobile home park rentals. And that effort that we made last year is going to be resumed this year, but at a much more expedited schedule up front. And so I'm participating in that endeavor as well.
Great,
But
thanks,
that's,
Kate.
yeah, it's one of the elements of preventing homelessness if you can keep the evictions from happening, especially if they're unconscionable evictions for no good reason, and just to jack up the rents. So, this is a vital piece of a multitudinal piece. Like this is a 1,000-piece puzzle.
Yeah,
Well,
and if we,
of the pieces.
yeah, and if we were to go statewide on this, I would think we would need a little bit more work on information about mobile home parks and what's happening in that area.
Yeah, that's almost a separate issue that our fellow team member Joe Fetter has been working on a fair amount, but I don't think it will work in a concurrence. Do you, Betty?
No,
Does it-
that's why I say if we go to at a state level, trying to get a position statement for a state level, we would have to get more information on that area. Because we didn't go into that in any depth.
Right.
So as far as the mobile home parks, Representative Basenecker Friday indicated that there would be bills that are going to be introduced this next session around mobile home park rental agreements for more transparency. Also access to broadband. He said some of these park owners are not allowing access to homeowners on the lots if the service is brought up to the park. They're going to be introduced. And then also right of first refusal and first offer for local governments in order to be able to preserve affordability, and also predatory towing. He said that those were issues that were going to come forward. The other thing he said, the senior home exemption will get more discussion. He said it's good policy, but he really struggles because he says it's a dilemma in terms of paying for it. He said maybe someone mentioned maybe means testing is an option, but they know that's going to be brought up. Another one was the emergency rental assistance that was approved in the interim session. He said it's limited in scope and it's going to have to be addressed in the regular session because there is the safety net to keep people in housing versus losing their housing. So that was also something that was brought up. The other thing he mentioned, last thing I'll say, is Prop 123 state dollars. He has a concern around those. And he said there's really a need for those dollars to be funding the deep housing needs and not be going, up the ladder with AMIs. That it needs to be kept where it was intended to be, and to consider the biggest return for that investment when they're allocating those dollars. So he had a lot of information, so that we know there's gonna be a lot coming forward in January, so as they say, we'll definitely be staying tuned to the news once the session starts.
And
Other-
especially after the governor just put forward his proposals and set them out for next year as far as housing, transportation, and so forth. That was a big thing that just released last week.
Yes, great. Okay, anything else today? This was a great discussion. I've learned and picked up on quite a few things happening. I see our January meeting is scheduled for the 15th, and it seems to me we talked about this before, but that's Martin Luther King Day. So Beth, am I right? The state office would be closed? Yes. So I would suggest and plus the session will, I think, is starting on the 10th, Kate, am I right? January 10th, first day?
I think that's right, but I haven't confirmed that either.
Okay, so then I would say maybe we move to the next Monday, January 22nd, and we'll make that our evening. And we'll go for, as Betty suggested, we'll do the 7 o'clock. So everybody's ready to go. So we'll go January 22nd at 7 p.m. I'll get that info to Jane to put on the calendar so that people are aware of. And then I'll work with Beth and Andrea in terms of speaker. We don't have anything yet. We'd certainly take suggestions. I see Barb has her hand raised. I bet she has a good speaker idea.
No, no, unfortunately, I have a problem. Our leadership from Arapahoe Douglas will not be able to attend a meeting on January 22nd. Sorry, but that's our standing management team meeting each month on that Monday evening of the month.
Okay,
So we can't like discuss our position, concurring with our position or anything on that night. So just to let you know. But we could do it maybe in February or something if you want.
okay, if we look at the February,
Well,
yes, isn't this interesting? The third Monday in February is President's Day.
although, since program planning is coming up in January, so Jeff Betty, you've got your ducks in a row and you're already done with this as part of your program planning, I believe. Is that true, Betty?
I don't think we've done anything for this year's program planning, have we, Jill?
But you voted to concur, is that right?
Yes, definitely.
No, I would say your work's done, like part of yours is done.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of late too for other leagues to be doing things,
Mhm.
turning on a dime in January, just saying. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking out loud here.
I think February might be a better target. And education in the meantime would be what we could work on.
Okay, that sounds good.
So where are we at then for meeting again?
So January 22nd, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what are we saying we can accomplish at that meeting is what I'm trying to clarify.
I'd like to see what we could put together for being able to do presentations in the interim between January and February, and maybe and work with the state office and how to do the concurrence for a statewide league concurrence.
Okay. All right, so we'll do some planning around that then, and I can work with Kate and Andrea and Beth. Barb, am I right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so we're on for January 22nd, 7 p.m. All right, any last minute notes? Otherwise, I say we move to adjourn.
Oh, I had one last just personal comment. I named my house because that's like this old tradition in Europe and other places and on the East Coast when people moved over from Europe. but I named it Hope Springs.
That's a coincidence.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, the other thing maybe in between now and then is take a look at our webpage on the State League site and let us know what you see on there that is not very helpful and what you think should go up there that would be helpful, so that we keep that page alive and representative of the work that's currently going on. Okay, I thank you so much for the great discussion today and taking the time to join us. So we will see you next year and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah,
Happy holidays all.
thanks, Beth. We'll be in touch.